The sun was barely up that morning when the forest woke to its soft light. Dewdrops clung to every leaf, and the air smelled of pine and earth. It was quiet, peaceful even, except for a faint, painful cry that broke through the calm. It came from under a bush near the riverbank, a small, trembling bird with feathers dull and ruffled. One of its wings hung awkwardly, twisted and useless. The poor thing tried to move, hopping weakly on its thin legs, but every time it tried to flap, it cried out in pain. A few feet away, an old man named Henry Walker was walking with his cane, as he did every morning. He was 72, tall but slightly bent, with grey hair and kind, tired eyes. Every day he came to this forest near his cabin just to breathe, to listen to the sounds of life that reminded him he was still part of this world. That morning, something felt different. Maybe it was the cry he heard, a sound of suffering he couldn't ignore. He followed it slowly, brushing aside a few branches, until he saw the small bird lying helpless under the bush. "Oh, you poor thing," Henry murmured, crouching down with effort. His knees cracked as he knelt, his hands trembling slightly. "What happened to you?" The bird blinked weakly, its chest rising and falling fast. Henry could see that the wing was broken. "You've had a bad fall, haven't you?" he said softly, as if talking to a child. For a long moment, Henry just sat there, watching the little creature struggle. Part of him wanted to walk away. After all, this was nature. Things lived and things died. But another part of him, the part that had seen too much loss already, wouldn't let him. Henry had lost his wife, Martha, 3 years ago. Cancer had taken her slowly, painfully, and when she finally left, it felt like his whole world had gone grey. Since then, he'd lived alone, with only the woods and the river to talk to. Now, looking at that helpless bird, he saw something of Martha in it, something fragile, something worth saving. "Hang in there, little one," Henry whispered. "Let's get you some help." He carefully wrapped the bird in his handkerchief and carried it home, every step measured and slow. The bird barely moved, its eyes fluttering open and shut. Henry placed it gently in a small wooden box lined with an old shirt. He remembered enough from his years on the farm to know that birds could heal if they were kept warm and safe. He boiled some water, made a soft mash of seeds and honey, and placed a few drops of it near the bird's beak. For a while, the bird didn't respond, but when Henry dipped his finger and touched its beak lightly, it opened its mouth just a little and took a drop. Then another. "That's it," Henry said softly. "You're stronger than you think." Over the next few days, Henry tended to the bird as if it were his own child. He made a small splint for its wing using thin twigs and medical tape. He kept the box near the fireplace so the little one would stay warm through the cold nights. Every morning he'd sit by the box with a cup of coffee and talk to it. "You know," he'd say, "when I first came to this forest, I thought my life was over. I had no reason to wake up anymore. Then I started walking out here every day. The trees didn't talk back, but they made me feel less alone." Sometimes he'd smile faintly. "And now here you are. Guess neither of us was meant to be alone." The bird slowly started to recover. It would peck at the seeds Henry offered and chirp softly, a fragile but beautiful sound. Henry named it Sparrow, even though it wasn't exactly one. "You don't need to be a sparrow to carry a strong spirit," Henry told it with a grin. Weeks passed, the bird's feathers grew shinier, its strength returned, and one morning it even hopped out of the box, fluttering its wings. Henry watched it with a proud smile. "That's my girl," he said. "You're getting there." But as happy as he was, there was a quiet sadness in his eyes. He knew what came next. The bird didn't belong in his house. It belonged in the open sky. He spent the next few days preparing himself for goodbye. Every time the bird chirped or fluttered to his shoulder, Henry felt a small ache in his chest. He had grown attached, maybe too much. But deep down, he knew true love meant letting go when it was time. One bright morning, the air smelled of rain and sunlight mixed together. Henry opened his cabin door and stepped outside with Sparrow perched on his hand. The bird looked stronger than ever. Its eyes sparkled with life. "This is your day," Henry whispered. "You were made to fly." He walked to the clearing near the river, where the light danced on the water. Then, with a shaky breath, he lifted his hand and opened it. For a moment, Sparrow hesitated, as if unsure. Then, with a few strong flaps, she took off, rising higher and higher, circling above Henry's head. Henry watched her go, smiling through his tears. "You did it," he said softly. "You're free." The bird soared above the trees, its wings slicing through the sunlight. For a few seconds, Henry thought she was gone for good, but then she circled back, flying low and singing a bright, cheerful song. It was as if she was saying thank you. Henry stood there for a long time, his heart swelling with a feeling he hadn't felt in years: peace. He turned and walked home slowly, the forest alive around him again. Every leaf, every breeze, every chirp seemed to whisper the same truth: life always finds a way back. Months later, winter came, covering the forest in white. Henry's hair had grown longer and his steps slower, but every morning he still went outside to feed the birds near his cabin. One morning, as snow fell gently, he noticed something strange. A small bird perched on the fence. It looked just like Sparrow. "Can't be," Henry said softly, smiling. "You're out there somewhere in the south, aren't you?" But the bird didn't fly away. It hopped closer, chirping a familiar tune. Henry laughed, a soft, broken laugh filled with joy. "You came back." The bird fluttered onto his shoulder just like old times. It sang again, louder this time, as if to tell him she hadn't forgotten. Henry closed his eyes, letting the warmth of that small moment sink deep into his heart. For the first time in years, he didn't feel lonely, or the message of the forest. That day, Henry sat by the fire thinking about life. He realized something beautiful, that sometimes when you save another life, you end up saving your own. He had rescued Sparrow from death, but in truth, Sparrow had rescued him from despair. From that day on, Henry became known in the small nearby town as the Birdman. Children would visit him to see the feeders he built, the shelters he made, and the countless birds that came every morning. When asked why he cared so much for them, Henry would smile and say, "Because every bird that learns to fly reminds me that broken things can be healed if someone just believes they can." Years later, when Henry passed away peacefully in his sleep, the townspeople buried him near his cabin, under the tall oak tree where he first released Sparrow. The morning of his funeral, something strange happened. Hundreds of birds gathered in the trees above his grave. They didn't fly away. They sang, a sound so pure and powerful that people said it felt like the forest itself was saying goodbye. And among them, one small bird, a sparrow-like one with a faint scar on its wing, perched on the wooden cross above his name. It chirped 3 times, then soared high into the sky until it disappeared into the light. If this story touched your heart and gave you hope, then please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to EchoMind Worlds, where every story inspires you to rise again.